And it's 8 p.m. You're welcome to yet another edition of Fact Sheet live on eTV, live on Facebook. Here, we don't mince words, we say it as it is, and the facts are always brought to the fore when we are having these deliberations. Tonight, we are talking about a report that was released a few days ago by CDD, and it focuses attention on the 2020 elections, the reasons why Ghanaians voted in a manner in which they voted, issues to do with why they voted for certain political parties in the parliamentary elections and then also for the presidential. Now, that report also highlights the future expectations of Ghanaians when it comes to the second tenure of the NPP administration and that of the opposition as well as to what the expectations are. Since this report came out, a lot of talk has been done on it in the mainstream media, on social media as well, with much focus being on the NPP administration. But tonight we believe that the focus should not only be on the NPP administration, it must be on the other political parties as well, because if you go through that document, you realize that Ghanaians tell you why they voted in a certain pattern or in a certain direction, not necessarily because the opposition political parties did something extraordinary, but it was as a result of the failings of the NPP. And so, should the political parties, the others, the opposition political parties, be doing something different going into the 2024 issues? Also, it speaks to the issue of the expectations when it comes to the fight against corruption, developmental expectations, crime in the country, unemployment issues in the country. All these things are captured in that report. But do we really understand what those percentages mean? Tonight, that's our focus on the fact sheet as we try to understand the reason behind why the CDD does these reports, what pushes them to want to find out why Ghanaians voted in a certain pattern and why they have certain expectations going into the year. My name is Samuel Shen and I welcome you to Fact Sheet on eTV. It's also live on NISIM 95.9 and 100.1. We're taking a short breather. When we come back, I will introduce you to my guest and then we'll set the ball rolling. And you're welcome back to Fact Sheet live on eTV, live on NISIM 95.9 in Bogatanga and 100.1 in Tamale as well. Tonight our focus is on the CDD report that was issued just a few days ago. And we're trying to understand what's contained in there. I will take a minute or two to walk you through some of the highlights of that report and then I will introduce you to my guests for tonight. So for the highlights of the findings of that survey, on opinions about the outcomes of the 2020 elections, this is what it says. A cumulative 58% attributed the reduction in President Akufo-Addo's vote margin to the president's policy decision and actions, cited by 21%. His MPs and appointees' performance, 19%, as well as the president's performance, 18%. That's the cumulative. Now, respondents attributed the loss of seats by the NPP to the non-performance of the NPP and its MPs, and that constituting about 33%, as well as the party's bad campaign strategy, constituting 24%. Respondents attributed the gains the NDC made in the parliamentary elections to the non-performance of the MPs, that constituting 22%, and the NDC's campaign strategy being 15%. They also saw it as a way of punishing the NPP for non-performance. That's 13% of respondents who spoke to CDD. Now, on opinions on policies, rule of law, and governance, this is what the report highlights. Fewer than half of Ghanaians are optimistic that in the next 4 years, the Akufo-Addo NPP-led government will perform much better or better in addressing the educational needs. 45% providing reliable supply of electricity, that's 44%, maintaining roads and bridges, that's 44%, and providing water and sanitation services, 43%. Only 1/3, that's 35%, are optimistic about government's ability to reduce crime. Only about 3 in 10 Ghanaians or fewer are optimistic about government's ability to fight corruption, constituting 30%, and promote collaboration between the ruling and opposition political parties, that's around 25%. If we can remember, just this morning, the papers reported of how the former president, John Dramani Mahama, is calling for collaboration to resolve the issues to do with the performance of our economy. In that regard, I introduce you to my guests tonight. I'm here with Mawusi Yao Dumenum. He's a research analyst. He joins me tonight. And Dr. Louis Asiedu, Senior Lecturer, Department of Statistics and Actuarial Science, University of Ghana. We'll be joined on the phone lines by Mr. Peter Bismarck, who is Executive Director for ELAPI, and they would help me understand these numbers, which are usually thrown at us when we're having these conversations which has to do with statistics. So I will start with Mawusi and ask him a few things about, what he makes of the report and the reasoning or logic behind the compilation of these surveys in the first place. Mawusi, good evening, Doc. Good evening.
Good evening, Samuel.
Yeah, good evening, Samuel. So I ask, what informs these, reports, surveys?
Thank you. Good evening to your viewers. For CDD, we are a policy think tank, a research policy think tank, and we believe that as much as it is, we need to inform policy making and policy option or choices with research.
All right, if you could raise your voice a bit for me, I would appreciate it.
I lost my voice a little bit, so.
You lost your voice? Oh, sorry.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that for CDD, we are a research think tank, and then we believe that the best way to be able to influence policy is to be able to generate data, and then that can inform this process of policy making within our space. And so that has been our trademark with a lot of programs that we run. And so coming to the issue of this particular research, we've done a lot of surveys over the course of CDD's establishment in 1998. And for CDD, including the Afrobarometer survey, that is run in 35 African countries. And so for CDD, most of the the surveys that relates to elections that we've done is usually the pre-election survey. So in 2016, we conducted a pre-election survey, and then in 2020 as well, we did a pre-election survey just to gauge the mood of citizens prior to the elections, and also to feed into the discourse and then the discussions, so that the discussions will be will focus on issue. It will drive some issue-based discussion instead of personality attacks and all that. But then coming to this particular survey, which is a post-election survey, this is the first of its kind that we are doing at CDD, and we believe that the outcomes of the elections were very interesting, and then there was a need to find some answers to it, and then to understand what the issues are, from the perspective of citizens. And so given the outcome of the elections, you realize that the president won all right, but then the vote margin that he had for the 2020 elections compared to the 2016 election had fallen. And so there was a need to interrogate that and then try and understand what the issues are from the perspective of citizens. On the other side as well, we have a hung parliament where NDC and an NPP, which are the major political parties, have an equal strength in parliament. That is, and then an independent candidate that is there. So 137 each plus an independent candidate. And so this is the very first time that we are having this kind of parliament in our political space, because usually it's always one party dominating. But then it's something novel within our political history, and especially in the Fourth Republic. And so we wanted to gauge citizens' expectations for this parliament, and then what they expect from this parliament. In addition to that, we're looking broadly at issues of policy, issues of the rule of law, and then governance in general, where we wanted to get citizens' perspective about what they think in terms of retrospectively going into the next 4 years, what this current government is likely to do, or what they expect the current government to do in the next 4 years, or how they expect that they will perform in certain areas. And so we broadly looked at this. In addition to that, I also looked at public office holders, what citizens expect of them. The hung parliament, the opposition person being the Speaker of Parliament, which is a bit novel as well. And so broadly speaking, these are the issues that we wanted to interrogate and then get citizens' perspective on what they think about all these things in general. And so that was a motive for this survey.
All right, so let me ask. I know that this was done between May 23rd, if I'm correct, to June 3rd.
Yeah, to June 3rd.
And so I asked the question, this time span with which you conducted this survey, is it wide enough for you to have gotten the kind of response you were looking for?
Yes, it's wide enough for us to get all the responses that we are looking at, because of the numbers that we also deploy across the country, the number of research assistants that we also deploy across the country to collect this data for us. And so it's just a good and a reasonable time to also collect this data. And so, I mean, the time span, there's nothing wrong with it.
Overall, how many Ghanaians did you speak to?
Okay, so overall, we spoke to 2,400 Ghanaians, and this number is a nationally representative sample of all adult populations 18 years and above. And we sampled this by a multi-stage stratification sample, where we looked at the national population and then the distribution across all the various regions. We also looked at the distribution across the rural-urban divide and then other demographics. And so the sample that we have mirrors or reflects closely with the sample that is spread across or distributed across the regional population dynamics. In addition to that, we also made sure that every adult citizen that we spoke to had an equal chance of being selected. So even at the level of or the level of the household, we ensured that the highest level of randomization was injected in how we selected the household.
So this was a national.
Yes, a national sample.
So all the 16 regions were covered.
Yes, all the 16 regions were covered. All the 16 regions were covered, and so dropping down from the regional level, from national level to the regional level, and then to the enumeration area level, we had an equal chance of every enumeration area being selected. And so when you look closely at the findings that we have, you realize that the rural-urban divide it mirrors closely to what the national population sample is. And so we made sure that each area had an equal chance of being selected, in the sense that even if it was far off, and then the sample picked it, we still sent people there to go and then collect data from there. And when they got to those communities as well, they applied stringent scientific principles in selecting the households that we have. And so we have some work patterns that our field research assistants are supposed to use or are supposed to apply when they're on the field. And so, for instance, they may take a central point within the particular enumeration area, and then they have a work pattern, and so they can count about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses, and they select the house, go in there, and then within the house as well, they sample randomly to the extent that they give each of the adult population within the household an equal chance of being selected, so that it takes away every bias. So, for instance, if somebody is nice looking, you don't say that person is nice looking, and so I want to go and talk to her. The person has a very strong build or physique, and so I prefer speaking to that person than somebody who looks probably feeble. And so it takes away all those biases because of the stringent protocols that we put in place.
All right, there's
for respondents.
There's a question I would like to ask, which has to do with the choice of months for this, survey. Now, I'm thinking about a government that has not really completely formed its government, because we don't have MMDCEs in place at the moment, and this could actually inform the outcome of this survey. Certain programs that are being rolled out is, for instance, if you look at just, I think, last week or last 2 weeks, the government started talking about the implementation of the Agenda 111, which could influence the outcome of some of the response that these respondents gave. Now, what informed the choice of May and June, from the 23rd to the 3rd, if I'm right?
Okay, so originally speaking, we were actually conducting a local governance survey.
Okay.
So that is a bigger survey that we're conducting.
Okay.
But we just spotted an opportunity to also ask some questions around the post-election, the outcome of it, and I already alluded to some of the interesting things that emerged from this the 2020 elections, and so the timing in itself, I won't say we specifically picked it because of some interest, but because we were already doing a survey on local governance, and then we spotted an opportunity to also ask some questions that we believe Ghanaians will be interested in providing some responses to, and will be interested in letting the government know or the public know what they are thinking. And so, yes, that's the more reason why it so happened that the period within which the survey was conducted happened to fall within 23rd and then 23rd May and then June 3rd.
All right. Doc, let me seek your opinion on the matter of, time period for these research works to be done, and whether the window for that, survey is enough to give us this, outcome that we are getting. What's your take on these concerns I have?
Thank you very much, Samuel, and good evening to your viewers. I mean, the window wouldn't be a problem. It depends on what is done. You understand the quality of work that is done. Even though it looks so short, you would want to critique whether a good work has been done by the outcomes that comes out of the survey. Usually in surveys like this, I've been on this before, the pre-surveys and stuff like that. I would always want to look at the methods that are behind the uptake of the survey before we look at how relevant the results that are churned out of these surveys are. Okay, a little bit of correction. I don't know which adult population they were using. Anyway, I have to commend them for doing this, and since this is the first time, we would pardon them for any lapses and stuff like that. But if you are using an adult population, that totals the total number of voters in the register, the voters register. That's about a little about 17 million, or maybe what is published out there, national adult population of about 18 million. They should be doing a minimum of 2,500 with a 2% margin of error. So I always don't know why CDD picks where they pick the 2,400 from. They always peg it there. And no, they are not doing any, like I always say, they are not doing any significant tests, nothing. You are just calculating percentages. So you have to get your sampling right. So you can make adequate inference. That's one of my basic problems with them. Even at the 2,500, you have to account for non-responses. You understand? And so in all this, we can pardon them for that. That's my little...
What do you mean when you say non-responses?
You are going out there to talk to people. The questions you are going to put out there might tax the memory of the respondents. Some might not even get it well, and some might even refuse to answer the question because of sensitivity and stuff like that.
So all should be captured in there?
Yes. So we usually do a 10% count for non-responses. So if you think 2,400 can infer into the population, remember when you go out there with 2,400, you can't get it. So you have to go with, say, 2,500. Just so when these non-responses come in, you fall down to the 2,400, which is representative of the population you want to infer from. So usually you capture all these things. If that was done, then they should have worked about 2,750 sample size.
As a sample size?
Yes. But far from that, I'm picking from the highlights that was published on August 31st, 2021. My simple question here is, I mean, these are highlights, so I wouldn't be privy to most of the methods that they are using there. But then one would quickly ask, if you put a statement like the sample is distributed across regions and urban areas in proportion of their share in the national adult population, every statistician will query that. What kind of sampling units is that? You can't be mixing regions with urban areas together and call them in proportion of. That is not proper.
Why are you reading this from? Is it from the background?
The
or from the methodology?
The methodology.
The methodology.
Line 3. Okay. It said the sample is distributed across regions and urban areas in proportion to their share in the national adult population.
Okay.
Sampling units clearly would be non-overlapping collection of elements that covers the entire population. And so regions, urban areas, these are two different things. Which of them are your sampling units? You understand that? You don't put that together like that. You at this level, when you are communicating, statisticians will read this. You have to capture the sampling units and tell us which sampling techniques you adopted in arriving at your elements in the population, in the sample. You understand? But that, I think, was a low one there. And so I'm not surprised going to the findings of the survey, there are a lot of inconsistencies. I would be very happy when I see to see the questionnaire that was put out there.
Where are these inconsistencies?
So let's pick up this thing.
You see.
Go to the highlights of the findings.
Okay, highlights
Quickly.
of the findings, yeah.
If somebody tells you that 21% of the people are saying the president is, what do you call it, losing votes because of policy decisions and actions, the person quickly comes and says that 18% are saying the president's performance. How do you separate these two things? Policy, decisions, and actions. How can you measure somebody's performance without taking into consideration the policy, decision, and actions of the individual? You know, when you are setting these things, they should be clearly non-overlapping groups. So you have to define what is the policy, decision, and action of the person, and how do you measure performance of a president without incorporating his policy decisions and his actions. So these two classes, per my view, shouldn't stand alone. They are together. Policy decisions and actions are the basis on which you measure somebody's performance. Let's look at this one also. They talk about 45% of the Ghanaians saying the Akufo-Addo-led administration will perform better in addressing the educational needs. Then a sharp contrast. 45 people are saying Ghanaians. You know, he's saying Ghanaians. That's how come you have to infer directly into the population war. This time you are not talking about 45% of the people you sampled.
Okay.
You are saying 45% of the Ghanaians. So you have to make sure your samples are representative enough. Then quickly you come down and say 52% are confident that the government will consolidate gains in free SHS. I mean, particularly for this government, everybody knows that free SHS, when you talk about education, their flagship program is free SHS. So you are talking about 45% saying that they would perform better in addressing educational needs. So where lies the remaining 9%? We come here and we say 52% now are saying that they are going to consolidate gains in free SHS. So that 9%, where were they when we were asking the question about addressing educational needs? You see, reliability checks failing here. Let's quickly take up this one.
But isn't there a distinction? Because, you know, you are a statistician, so I wanted to deal with the issues as they are. Now, they speak about 45% saying that they believe that the Akufo-Addo administration will do much better in addressing educational needs. This wasn't specific. So there are two categorizations we are looking at. And then the 52% says majority of Ghanaians are confident that the second Akufo-Addo NPP-led government will consolidate the gains of the free SHS program. So these are two distinct statements.
Let's pick it this way. The reverse could have sufficed. There are people, okay, now you are talking about educational needs, which is broad, in which you will find the free SHS.
And you also find tertiary and then
other
the
stuff. So if 45% falling short of 9% are saying that they are going to address educational needs, then you come down there, then you see 52 people saying that they will consolidate their gains. Look at the statement. They will consolidate their gains. Any gain in free SHS is gain in education. You see, when we put these questions in questionnaires, we do so to do a reliability check. You understand? So you want some level of consistency. During your data validation, you want to pick up some of these things. You understand? So whenever there is a question that you have a lower percentage of your your people you survey subscribing to that question, and that question is entirely, or you understand, has a bearing with another question, and in that question you see a counter response, then you have to do something about your questionnaire.
I wish I could follow your logic, but I hesitate to do so.
Okay.
Because if, as we are sitting here, so somebody is asked, what do you think about the show that we are watching? Then 42% of the people say, I think the show is a good show. And it's going well. Then now, a subset of the general statement which has been made about what do you think about the show is, what do you think about Sammy Eshen's performance on that show? Then 52% of respondents say the guy is not good.
No, so you look at it this way. Addressing the educational needs. So let's pick it from here. I made 2 points. The first one, which I talked about, policy decisions and actions.
Yes.
Claire, you talk about, you see, when you put all these options down, they should be non-overlapping. Reason being that you want to measure responses in these categories uniquely. You understand? So when you put these responses down and one of the response, well, one of those categories seems to overlap with the others, you are not measuring the right thing. Far away from that. Now let's come to addressing the educational needs.
Okay.
You say 45% of Ghanaians are sure that the president would address educational needs. Then you come and say they are confident that the president will consolidate gains. He's not saying that the president will do much better, or you understand? He said he's going to consolidate his gains of the free SHS program. You understand me? When you say somebody will consolidate his gains, consolidate gains in which direction? Towards his educational policy. In terms of education, he will consolidate the gains he's making in free SHS. This is counterintuitive as far as the first decision is concerned. So the remaining 9% that said that he is not going to address educational needs going forward. Why would they be saying he will consolidate his gains in free SHS? Consolidate gains to promote what? Education. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they are saying the free SHS program will do better or something. He's going to consolidate his gains.
So for you,
yes,
that percentage increase there,
yes,
should have reflected in the push in the generality when it comes to the educational sector.
Otherwise, there should be reasons for declining. Even though we think he's going to do this in free SHS education, because of A, B, C, D reasons, he's going to, you understand? But you are saying he's going to consolidate his gains. If you say somebody will consolidate his gains, as far as free SHS is concerned, his gains in what direction?
Let me give Mausi a chance to clarify this if you can, and then quickly let's jump on the phone lines, and then I'll come back to you to try and make sense of the numbers that we are looking at. Mausi.
All right, Sam, thank you very much once again. Okay, so I find it very hard to just accept the fact that he is making Dr. Siedu is saying that a sample size of 2,400 is not adequate. Okay, and then the fact that we are mixing rural, urban, and then mixing the regional population dynamics. Okay, so we take our primary sampling units, what we call the enumeration areas, at the community level. Okay, and so we make sure that once you are sampling, the population dynamics, it reflects what the regions are saying. What the population proportions for the regions are. At the same time, we also make sure that the dynamics of the rural-urban proportions at the national level is represented in our sample. And so, for him to make that point, I just beg to differ on that. Okay. In addition to that, the issue of this particular question that he is talking about, addressing educational needs. Okay, these are completely different questions. Okay, completely different questions. Okay. And I don't know if I can read out
exactly.
I can read out what the questions are, because from the press release that you have, it doesn't give you, for instance, the questions that are being asked.
I believe he asked for it, that if he saw the questions, it would inform some of the points that he's making.
Okay, so so the press release is just a simplified version of this bigger report that we have, and so it takes out the questions, the kind of questions that were asked.
Can you walk us through?
Okay, so
on the education bit.
Okay, so the very first one was asking a prospective evaluation of government service delivery.
No, let's dash to for want of time.
Okay,
the one that focuses on general education and then that of the free SHS.
Okay, so let me come to the first one. Okay, so the question says, looking ahead, do you expect the following conditions to be better or worse by the end of the Nana Akufo-Addo NPP-led government in the second term of office? Okay. So it's a number of questions that come. Okay, the very first one is addressing educational needs. And then there are 4 other questions: providing reliable supply of electricity, maintaining roads, bridges, providing water and sanitation service, and then reducing crime. And so out of this number, 45%, this is a prospective question looking at the next 4 years. Okay, so 45% say they think it will be much better or better. Now coming to, so that is on one hand for that particular question.
For that one.
Okay, so now coming to the other question as well. The other question as well. it's also a block of questions in there. The very first one is saying, how confident are you that in the next 4 years, the Akufo-Addo-led MPP's government will be able to, one, consolidate the gains of the free SHS program as pledged in the MPP's 2020 manifesto? These are two different questions. Okay, and then it goes on extend electricity to cover the entire population as pledged in the MPP's 2020 manifesto. I think these are two very different questions, and so if you are getting responses that are different, I don't see why that should be much of a problem here.
Can I?
Yes, you can.
You see, with respect to the sample size of 2,400, we are not working with rocket science. We are in the classroom. It is not correct. Take it from me.
Why is it not correct?
The population size is 17,000.
17
The
million.
basic 17 million. If you do basic Sloven's formula, you are about 2,500 minimum at a margin of error of 2%. This is basic. I mean, this one you can't come back on that. You have to accept. Then we remedy it. 2,400. Translate. You can do a simple calculation. I can push it out to you. So this is. But I mean, that's not even where I want to take. In the issue of
I don't agree with him.
Okay, fine. I mean, we can decide. We will talk about that. In the issue of the population dynamics thing, you don't just come and start explaining that we measure mixed population. Use the proper processes. You talked about.
If they mix the population, does it affect the outcome? Would it affect the outcome?
That's beautiful, but we have met processes to do that. You talked about stratifications. What are your stratum? Each of the stratums. You come talk to me about enumeration areas, urban areas, rural areas, and talk about regions. These cannot form stratum or a strata in row. You are looking at homogeneity within a stratum, heterogeneity across. You understand? So that's why I'm saying that these are highlights. The details might be found in there. But what I'm saying is that the way it has been captured, if any statistician picks it up, you have a problem with it. So the person would ask, what is your sampling unit? Because you are mixing two different things. Urban areas cannot stand hand to hand with regions. And you said these are segregated in you allocated into these areas in proportion of their shares, and it's clearly captured here. So when I pick up this, I will say, okay, what is region and what is an urban area?
Can I come in there?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that you see, if we are looking at within the region, okay, so first of all, we make sure that our sampling it mirrors.
So within the region, within the region, there's a subset of urban and then the rural.
So the way you capture it, you said the sample is distributed across regions and urban and rural areas in proportion of their share. So you are picking region alongside urban and rural areas, and I'm saying that these two things are different things. Regions can stand in the as strata. Then you go further. No, get me right. Regions. Bronga Alpha region, Greater Accra region, they can stand in there as what? Strata. Even with that, you have to identify your stratification variable to make them stratums. Then you go to the next level. You go in the region, then you tell us, okay, when I enter a region, I go further. Look at the electoral areas. Those also are common, and they can stand in there. Then you go further. When you are going to pick the elements, you now tell us what sampling technique you are using to pick the elements, not telling us that you do go there, count, random walk, you select 4 houses. There is a name for it. That's systematic sampling. If you are doing systematic sampling at periodic, you tell us. And tell us the gains you are going to get from that. If you are not doing systematic sampling, you are doing simple random sampling. Justify it. Tell us reasons why you are doing. So you are doing stratification with proportional allocation to size, simple random sampling, systematic sampling. Justify all these things. You see, the reason why I'm worried about these things is that you've done the pre-survey, it had these problems. We came to talk about them. You didn't remedy it. You've done the post-survey with these problems. You are making projections that are telling us Ghanaians are saying this. Look at this statement they made.
All right, but let me clarify this point.
Yes.
Can you give us a sense of what constitutes an urban area?
Yes.
Per this survey? I'll see.
Okay, so we get we take our data from the Ghana Statistical Service, okay, and so per each of the regions, okay, when we sample, we have a list that cuts from the regional level, and then it comes down to the enumeration area level. And so within that, you have enumeration areas that fall within urban areas. You have enumeration areas that fall within rural areas. And so when we are sampling, we sample in such a way that the sample that we have, it takes into account all these dynamics. And so we're able to sample.
So then it brings us to the point of the stratification
and then have
about.
Sample and then have
because it brings us to the point about the stratification.
And so we make sure that at the end of the day, it reflects on
no,
the
you see, when there is a predefined threshold or description or categorization of an area, then it makes, for instance, if you say a district as a strata. Exactly. Do you understand? It has a defined border that you can work with. Exactly. But if we are trying to, let's say that, okay, this is an urban area, by what measurement are we saying this is an urban area? Did you get the point he's making? So to make for the easy stratification of the areas you want to, I think that's why he's raising the concern about the mix-up when it comes to the various areas you went to. But quickly, I think we've done a lot of disservice to our third guest who has been on the line all this while. Mr. Peter Bismarck is Executive Director for ELAPI. He joins us. Mr. Bismarck, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
I trust you're doing well tonight, sir.
Sure, I'm doing great.
Kindly pardon us for keeping you on the line for that long. The conversation was becoming interesting in the studio. So let me get your reaction to the report as you read it. What was your reaction to it, the content?
Yeah, so good evening to your choice viewers. I'm enjoying I think the lecturer and the other researcher. And yeah, they all have a good case. Well, for me, after going the demography, I am thinking that, the sampling process or the entire survey happened between rural areas and other. So I was thinking we could have a measurable indicator for all the urban and that of the rural. Or we could even have what did the urban community or urban areas, what did they say about maybe free seekers? And what did the rural folks also said about free seekers? When it comes to reopening the discussion on MMDC, what the urban say and what the rural folks say, then we could have an average to say that overall 48% said this or 52% said that. But to both all together, you can remember that cities, electricity is a different thing to them as compared to that of those in the rural areas. When it comes to even the MMDC's election, how we understand the dynamics of MMDC's election is quite different from what the rural areas would also understand. When it comes to rule of law, the same thing. Okay, when it comes to curbing corruption and impunity by government officials, it's the same thing. So the dynamics within the urban areas are quite different from the dynamics within the rural areas. Because we have also conducted a similar report, but that is not about post-election, but we are looking at business registry in Ghana. So we did that for MMDA and we did that for the other statutory institutions, that is the FDA, GS, and the rest. So we are doing that for only the institutions working directly with RDD, and then we did that also for MMDAs alone. And we had to tell you that, look, this is what this guy said, and this is what the MMDAs said. But when you have an average, this is the red tape within the business registry. So you can understand the dynamics of how urban folks understand politics, democracy, elections, and other kind of conversations ongoing as compared to the rural folks. That's my only challenge about the report. But in all, it is a simple frequency report. You don't need to, have this regression, use jargons. It's just a simple frequency report, and it is speaking to public knowledge. This is a public knowledge thing. But my challenge has to do with boxing together the rural and the urban dynamics.
All right, let's try and make some sense of the figures that are in there. Where, for instance, we are told that respondents attributed the gains the NEC made in the parliamentary elections to the non-performance of the MPP MPs, that's constituting 22%, and then the NEC's campaign strategy being 15%. Now, what do these mean? If we say that it was a non-performance of the NPP members of parliament and that the NDC strategy accounted for, let's say, 15% in terms of the numbers that they got in parliament, these numbers, how do they make sense?
Numbers are one thing, but what is behind the number is what we have to interpret.
Okay.
So, these MPs live with the constituents.
Before you even proceed, Mr. Bismarck, there's even the point where the research says that 13% said that they voted in the manner in which they voted to punish the NPP as a government for non-performance. I'm trying to make sense of these numbers.
It's interesting. It's quite interesting, but I'm saying that let's look at the analysis beyond the numbers, because they live with the constituents, or they had lived with them before, and they know what they are doing. They know the kind of activities they put in place, the kind of project they put in place in there, and they know all the slogans that happen in this scheme, and the kind of messages these MPs give out to their constituents. So they also expected something from the MPs, from these members of parliament, because they have already promised them to do A, B, C, D, in line with what the president has also promised within the manifesto. Because within the constituencies, they also have their own promises. And then at the national level, we have the manifesto. So what the MPs will do will be quite different from what the manifesto will be implementing, because the MPs' projects and programs are immediate, whereas that of the president or the manifesto are short-term, medium-term programs. One district, one factory. All those things are short-term, medium, or long-term projects. So they will not feel the impact immediately. So if previously there was an NDC MP within a particular constituency, and then the impact during his tenure of office, comparing that to an MPP Ghana that had won in 2016, right, and they see that the measurable impact is quite beyond that of maybe what the NDC guy did. They might maintain the MPP. Okay. But what he did is what the NDC did previously, because 2016, they had to take off the MPP. So and bring back the NDC. So it's the dynamics are quite different. Beyond the number for individuals, they'll tell you what they have to tell you, because you have options to choose from. Whether the objective of what they have chosen is another, because in the country we have politicized everything. For all you know, the person you have been interviewed is an NDC person or NDC person, who knows? You get it? So the objectivity of this response is quite questionable, though. But we have to stick to the outcome, because that's what the data is saying. That's what the full data is telling us. So beyond the numbers, there's a whole lot of that happens there. They have to compare the impact of the MPP government as a whole and the impact of the MP within the constituency also as a whole. Then they have to look at why they have to take up one particular MP and bring another, or maintain the person, irrespective of whether the political party is dominant. We say, for example, in Kumasi or the Ashanti region, the dominance is the MPP. Then when you go to the Volta region, the dominance is the NDC. Yes, we have that. We have that dynamics there, though. But currently, our politics is quite evolving. So it is telling us a lot about things. Look at what happened in Teshi, for example, when Dr. Ukun lost, but he won. In 2016, he won. And when you look at the post-election conversation that happened in Teshi, for example, the people said that he didn't perform more than what his predecessor did. So they have to take him out and bring back the NDC. And when the NDC also fails, the NDC MP also fails, they are going to change him and bring back NPP. So you are unlike before, whether it is we used to say you bring in a goat or you bring in the flag of NPP or NDC, and they are going to vote for that very party because of the dominance ratio. But quite recently, it is different.
All right.
So beyond the numbers, it happens there. That is why you could say that yes, we have to punish them before because they are not performing. Because now electorates are measuring the impact of every MP in the constituency. So you cannot just say because of my dominancy, we all win election. It is not the same anymore.
Mr. Bismarck, I will thank you. We'll go for a short bit. When we come back, we'll take some wrap-up comments. I know there's a lot more to discuss. There's a lot more to look at, but time is not our friend tonight. We'll just be right back, and then we'll take wrap-up comments from our guests tonight. And you're welcome back to Fact Sheet live on eTV, live on NISIM 95.9 in Bolgatanga and 100.1 in Tamale. We're talking about the CDD's report post-elections, what they found out, the expectations of Ghanaians of the Akufo-Addo administration for the next 4 years. So, making sense of the numbers, our time is fast spent, so I will try if we can do some 1.5 minutes, and then we'll wrap up for tonight. Look, the numbers, if they are jumping at you, what are they telling you?
Yeah, so I mean, all said, we have to commend them for the work, post-election survey, maybe first, the work they've done, it's okay, we have to commend them. As an institution in the quest to promote and deepen democratic governance and consolidate peaceful elections and stuff like that, they've done well. It's a step in the right direction. The point is, usually when they are doing the thing, the conclusions are a little bit authoritative. So what we really want to do is to straighten them a little, to get them doing the right thing. Then at the end of the day, we can take meanings from the conclusion. But all said and done, some of the things that are put in there might genuinely be the concerns of the electorate, the ordinary Ghanaians. But what makes them feasible are the methodologies that underpins these things. And that is what I seek to actually critique from where I come from. But in all, CDD has done a good job, just that they should next time look at their methods, paths they go through, justify everything, because of course some of us will come at them looking at the dots, crossing the T's and stuff in order to make authoritative statements.
Oh, I know you're not a political analyst, but should this report be able to influence government decisions and then that of the political parties going forward?
Yeah, a lot, but not in its entirety. A lot, but not. Because some of the things I see from my expertise are directed questions, and therefore people were just subscribing to the categories they have kept in there. They didn't allow the questions to, the thing to be a little bit open. But all said and done, if they are seeing, the government themselves has seen that there was a drastic decline in their performance, and definitely there are reasons underpins to that effect. But whether these reasons that are there are exactly the underpins, I would only believe so when we are doing the thing right.
Now, obviously, final one. I'm trying to understand the measurement of punishment for the government's inability to deliver. What sort of question was posed for that conclusion to be arrived at, that the people wanted to punish the government?
Okay, so in terms of that particular question, we asked how do you interpret the reduction in the vote margin of President Akufo-Addo in the December 2020 compared to what he obtained in the December 2016 election? What would you say it is? And so the reasons came in from there. And so this is how the question was.
So this was open-ended?
This is how the question was crafted, yes.
Okay.
This is how the question was crafted. Yeah.
Right.
But I just would like to say that for Dr. Seidu to say that the questions are a bit authoritative, I disagree with that. And I find that an interesting comment.
It's the findings.
I find that an interesting comment, and I don't know where authoritarianism is coming from in relation to the findings that we have. But I mean, with that being said, and regardless of that, these are findings that we actually spoke to citizens from across the length and breadth of the country, and this is their opinion on the various issues. And so going forward, we believe that the government in question and even the political parties and I mean all well-meaning people should try and then look at what the results are saying and then try and take a cue from there. That yes, there are some priority areas that citizens have highlighted. For instance, issues of job creation being number one, issues of roads and infrastructure being top priority issues that they want the government to deal with. And so we would also like to direct attention to that. Issues of crime also came in strongly as one separate question that they believe that going forward they don't have that confidence of government dealing with it. And so these are things that we believe that the survey is pointing to a lot more of the concerns of the ordinary Ghanaians, and the fact that our government and our political leaders need to look at these issues and then find holistic means of trying to address them for the betterment of all Ghanaians.
All right, let me see if I can get a wrap-up comment from Mr. Bismarck, if he's on the line with us. Mr. Peter Bismarck, are you there with us?
Yeah, sure, I'm here.
All right, so let me take your wrap-up comment. I'm sorry, but I would have to limit you to a minute.
Interesting. Yeah, so I think some of the reports are very important to drive national debate, especially for the government to start restructuring its policies and programs to ensure that objectives of creating a prosperous society is achieved. So for me, I'm okay with the entire report because it's quite okay for us to have a national conversation around that, especially on corruption and other indicators and measurements used. Going forward, I would also ask CDD to some extent work on an element that defines some of these statements, because, for example, if you say 24% said because of bad government, bad campaign, sorry, what are the characteristics of a bad campaign? So you can have elements of bad campaign, then you measure those elements within bad campaign, then you can then score it. But for everybody to tell them bad campaign, so what is a good campaign then? Or what is the percentage of people who said good campaign? Which was not found in the report. But I think in all, it's good for us to have a debate on that.
We are grateful, Mr. Peter Bismarck, for joining us tonight. I know the conversation became a little bit technical with some of those terminologies and jargons, but we found our way back home safely. My name is Samuel Echid. I've been here with Doc. I'm grateful that you joined me tonight. Maruzi, I'm grateful that you joined us. Mr. Bismarck, I'm grateful that you joined us tonight. Girl Vibes is up next, and the teams are ready. Tomorrow, God willing, there will be a repeat broadcast of this show. To watch it at 10 a.m. live on eTV. For now, I say good night.